Welcome to the show. Very happy to have Kerri Martin, founder and executive director of Second Life Bikes here in Asbury Park. Thanks for coming on the show. You're super busy. Your bike shop is probably already blossoming like the weather, and I assume it gets out of control. What's that like?
Yeah, literally like the first day of spring or the first sign of spring, it's like all of a sudden these people come out of the woodwork, dragging their bikes down the street, ready to bike again. I mean, some of them, bike all winter, but some of them, this is the season, like from now until September, when they get out their bikes and they don't move their cars and they ride around the Jersey Shore. So it does, you do have to like kind of ease your mindset in it. I have to channel my inner Buddha of just like, dealing with people again and, when things will be ready and what people want. But we're used to it by now. We've been there at 21 Main Street for 12 years now. So we kind of know the change of seasons there.
Yeah, and your space is really big. You have a gigantic space, so I could see it also inviting larger groups of people. So I guess you had to get used to crowds
like
early.
maybe like a family of like 6 that come in, and maybe just little Junior needs a bike, but they all come in. Because also bikes people like bikes and they want to look at all of them and talk about them. So it is like a fun experience. It's not like Junior is just picking out like a t-shirt. Like it is like a fun event to come for like, somebody's next bicycle.
Well, there's bikes there not just for Junior. You get some proper road bikes in there too. I have a few friends who have gotten some excellent road bikes out of there. Is that I know you probably deal less in those types of bikes, but what's the difference with the customers that might come in looking for Junior or looking to find that 1970s blah 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 road bike?
Yeah, I mean,
like the heavy geeks.
We really have everything in there. Although we don't have, the things we don't have. People come in like looking for a mountain bike, and when they're looking for like a real mountain bike, it has suspension and disc brakes. Like we don't necessarily have those. We don't necessarily have high-end road bikes. But people also shopping for those kind of things might have already been somewhere else and know that, bikes aren't like those aren't necessarily cheap. Thousands of dollars people spend on, road and mountain bikes. So, coming to Second Life Bikes and getting, a Cannondale that's 10 or 15 or 20 years old is still like perfectly suited for what they need to like try a triathlon or ride to Sandy Hook or something. So, it's impossible to satisfy everybody, but we do have a lot of different things, and even vintage stuff. There are a handful of cool stuff there, but out in the world, on like the internet or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, people are selling some really cool like vintage things, and because bikes are donated to us, it's not like we get like every single like primo bike. Like someone's not necessarily gonna donate their like hand-built Italian campy equipped road bike to us. But, of course we get a lot of like, rusty cruisers and old hybrids and kids bikes too.
Well, you don't know what you're going to find. That's kind of what's cool about it. It's like, it's got that estate sale vibe. Every time you walk in, you don't know. I think that's exciting.
Or like one guy came in yesterday looking for vintage BMX, and I always just, completely say we don't have it. I feel like that kind of stuff right now is being kept in garages and basements and attics by usually men ages like 35 to 55, like reliving their dreams in the 80s. Reliving their childhood, like the red line that they so wanted and couldn't get, and now they're spending like, $1,000 to get it, and then they post it on BMX Museum.
Oh, you have a strong opinion about this, don't you? Okay, go on.
But then they come in there, like we don't have, like, let me show you our vintage BMX section. Maybe we'll get something here or there. But again, they're not just being like dropped off. Maybe it's, someone donated it because it's been sitting in their garage or forever. But, I guess the internet like has changed stuff a bit, that like, yes, if it was something was at a garage sale or, in somebody's basement, somebody now might take it and, refurbish it, post pictures online and keep it or hang it somewhere. So Anyway, yes, we do have a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff we don't have too. I think I was trying to say, like, there's still a lot of other bikes in the world that we don't get. But yes, right now it's like, the questions are, do you have a cruisers? Do you have hybrids? I want to do somebody wants to do their first triathlon or ride more further, and like I said, like a 15-year-old Cannondale, like perfectly suits them.
I first got turned on to your place when I was teaching in Asbury Park down the street, and one of the students, I don't remember if he was my student or 1 year younger than the students I was teaching, and he was telling me, oh yeah, I have a job, I go and I'm learning how to fix a bike. And then he explained the community involvement aspect of Second Life bikes, and I said, oh, that's cool. So I think I joked, I'm gonna go there and make sure you're working hard and you're not being a knucklehead, like the whole bit. And I think that was the first time I went into the store. And how did the concept of Second Life bikes come about? And for people who don't know, what is the concept?
Yeah, so the concept already exists. And what is the concept? The concept is that we rescue old bikes. Meaning, like, old bikes are brought to us. People that don't use their bikes anymore. And then a couple things can happen to them. We could either sell them, and that's how we survive. We are a nonprofit, but we also we also are a business too. So, we pay rent and insurance and taxes and staff. So it could be sold, but we also try and keep in mind too that some of these bikes might be sold to people going from their day job to their night job. So keeping in mind, like, making sure that there's bikes under $100 on the floor, kids' bikes, pricing them low to keep them, like, because kids grow out of them. But then they also could be earned by kids, and how that existed, and just because of COVID, things have been a little on hold, but how it exists is kids ages 12 to 18 can come there and earn a bike, so they could work 15 hours. And work means, like, volunteer, essentially. We don't expect them to be bike mechanics, but, they sign in, they report, it's sometimes a little bit of learning too. We're not unleashing them on, like, bike repairs, but here, like, take this seat off this old bike and try and put another one on. And they can earn a bike. Like, right now and we also work with a lot of different schools or programs. Like, right now we have several students from different schools, like rugby school or academy charter, where kids are on work programs. They could actually be being paid by another entity to get real world experience. So they're placed, they could be placed at Five Below, or they could be placed at Second Life Bikes. So they usually like to be placed at Second Life Bikes. At Academy Charter, kids get credit, towards classes and stuff. So right now we have like 3 or 4 students doing that on these work programs. So they're probably there, like, 6 hours a week or more. So they're not necessarily earning a bike, because they are earning money for what they are doing. But again, the idea is that they are listening and learning, at least trying to get some job experience, and we don't necessarily think we're, like, training these kids to become bike mechanics, because I don't think it's the best career path to follow, because bike shops are going by the wayside, and it's not necessarily like a career that pays well. But at least they are learning how to figure things out, like how to use a tool, or how to, like, look somebody in the eye, or even, like, crush a cardboard box. I mean, just, like, sweep the floor even. I mean, some things these kids haven't been anywhere. So, just what it's like to hustle and just be there and, like, let's do this. So
every human being needs life lessons.
Yeah.
And some of us get more opportunities for them. Some of us get less opportunities for them, but they're always, it's crucial. I noticed that too when I was teaching in certain communities, that it was like, I thought I was teaching this one subject, but really you're imparting some life lessons that maybe they weren't getting for one reason or another. So it's rewarding.
Yeah. And a couple kids have gone on to get summer jobs, at Brielle Cyclery or Belmar Bike Shop or something. But again, that's not the goal. The goal is that they, like, see what it's like to work and to hustle. I mean, I've been there from the very beginning, and I'm running around and hustling, and I, just like, let's figure this out. And like I said, even just righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, like learning a wrench, like learning how to loosen an axle nut. So yeah, the kids there now could be earning like school credits, could be earning money through another program, could be like even like National Honor Society from some schools, or it could just be a kid that wants to earn a bike too. So after 15 hours, they get a bike that they still need to fix up to, and then they can call it their own. So the concept then, that whole idea, I didn't necessarily come up with. Like, it existed before. I want to say now maybe like, I don't know, 30 years ago in New York City, Karen Overton, who I used to work for, started Recycle a Bicycle. How it started in New York City was more a problem with the, I was going to say public works. I feel like the sanitation department in New York City. Like, what do we do with all these bikes that are being thrown away and going to the landfill in Staten Island? So that's kind of where it stemmed from, a talk with the sanitation department and Karen Overton to start this youth program. So she's like the kind of the queen of all this. We're not all related, but meaning that's one of the first operations like I could think of in the country.
So was the motivation on that more of from a recycling or upcycling? Was that really the original seed of obviously landfills are an issue, and it was really more of a practical upcycling concept?
Yeah, because I feel like in the very beginning of Recycle a Bicycle days, it was also like not a business. I think it was just like in Charis Community Center on the Lower East Side. I think they partnered with like Henry Street Settlement, which was like a youth program also with job skills. And then I think like I learned too is that bicycles are a commodity. So instead of just like recycling the bikes and having people earn them, like also selling them, which is also always an issue with nonprofits. Like, how do you sustain yourself? Like, you can't just wait on the next grant or foundation. But organizations like Second Life Bikes or Recycle a Bicycle, have this commodity that we can also sell that people want to buy. So that's how we can then support ourselves. Some organizations like ours, maybe there's one like in Rochester that I know that I visited before, or maybe one in like at college universities can exist very like volunteer based. Like maybe it's in like a church basement, or the one in Rochester is like just a whole bunch of like bike people that go on Wednesday night to fix bikes, and on Saturday mornings they just give them away to people that have a letter from their social service organization or something. And then it's funded maybe by like one of the pharmaceutical companies, they get free space or something like that, which is great. And in college towns, sometimes that exists too. Like it's just in the basement of a dorm and there's tools and you pay some money to use it. So I think like what works is depending what city or town you're in. What kind of model you want to follow, whether you have like free rent in a church basement or in a college dorm and it's just volunteers giving out bikes, or if you see it like how I see here, Second Life Bikes, that bikes on the Jersey Shore, like, everybody bikes here for the most part, even if you don't necessarily bike other times, or like, your relatives from Staten Island might not bike there, but they come down to the Jersey Shore in the summer and everyone's on bikes because it's easy around here. It's easier.
Well, it's a thing.
It's like built-in infrastructure. It of course could be better, but we don't have like major highways. So you can bike from Asbury to Manasquan without being like a professional cyclist or Long Branch. Like it's built in along here that the streets are made for it. So there's that reason, parking, all those kind of things. And it's fun. Yeah, you're here for the weekend. Let's go for a bike ride instead of like getting in your car to go to the beach. It's natural here for the most part. Where was I going with that? Like depending like where you live. So Second Life Bikes, I think, exists. At first, years and years ago, when this was just like my hobby, and I was more of the model of like the church basement college dorm scenario where I had the garage at Holy Spirit Church. I had met Father Bill.
Where is this?
Holy Spirit is 2nd and Main Street.
Oh, here in Asbury Park.
Here in Asbury Park, yeah. Okay. So I had met Father Bill, who was he's passed away since, but he was very into community and social justice things. So I had pitched the idea of like, bikes, teaching kids how to fix bikes. And he's like, well, you can use this garage if you clear it out. So, I cleared it out. And on Mondays, I opened the garage doors and just like brought bikes and tools out there. And literally like neighborhood kids, like it just grew that way. And the bike church, that was called, was just something, yes, totally. We didn't pay rent. It wasn't my salary. I just had a few tools. It was all just bikes that we kind of found, and kids earned bike. So from that, I kind of saw how it was something needed in Asbury Park, something for kids to come to, because I also realized once they got a bike, they still came back every Monday. It was just a place to like come and ride your bike around in circles in the parking lot. And I wouldn't have guessed that beforehand. I would have guessed like a kid earns some bikes and then maybe you don't see them again.
Well, kids crave routine.
I mean, I literally could I remember it was like 4 to 7, I would say it was open on Mondays. And I used to like open those garage doors and I would really like turn around and I would see like the kids. I just ran into a bunch of girls, the Rojas girls, 4 sisters who were probably like 5 to 10 years old at the time. And they're, 20 to 25 now. Yeah. And they were just, so reminiscing about the bike church parking lot. As Jessica even said, like, was it then too, we would roll out like a basketball net and we would take out a grill and we would start making hamburgers. Jessica, the way she talked about the hamburgers at the bike church parking lot was like, and this girl just graduated St. Peter's and she works for, and that's what she remembered, like just like sitting there eating a hamburger in the bike church parking lot. So they totally reminisced about those days, and it really was nice. But then, so I realized that it could be more than just like a kid getting a bike and not seeing again. It was really like bikes. And that's how Second Life Bikes is too, that it lends itself to people just wanting to be in there. They come and get a bike, but then they come back and hang out and come with their family to get a bike. And then also what I realized here, people started asking me, and adults asking me about like bikes, about like used bikes. And I would maybe like fix them up and like, sell them to a friend or give them to a friend or something, and just realize the need. I didn't know if the idea like a recycle a bicycle level place could exist like in a small town, meaning Asbury Park, especially at the time. And the answer is yes. But I wasn't quite sure if it could be like my career. It could be this whole entity that, has employees and everything. But yes, there is a need and want for used bikes. And then, I mean, especially since COVID too.
Yeah, and you mentioned space. Space is often, it comes down to the space you're in. And you also mentioned corporate sponsorship. Is that a popular way to go? You mentioned pharmaceutical company. I used to work for Bristol Myers. And they produced the cancer drug that Lance Armstrong. I don't know the chemistry of it all or the epidemiology of it all, but they produced the drug that he took that I don't know if he was in full remission or if it was, I don't know the stage of cancer he had, but that treated his cancer. So he had a partnership with the company, and I wasn't into bikes or cycling at the time, so I didn't really pay attention to that. But his bike, the one he had just won something on, was in our like a multi-purpose area, but the schmancier multi-purpose for like a month. It was just
and
like,
was this out in
this is the Lawrenceville location.
Oh yeah.
So there's several locations in New Jersey. It might have a Princeton address, but it's technically in Lawrenceville. And the bike was there for a couple weeks or a month. And my boss at the time, Anthony Romano, if you're out there, what's up? He was like a cycling nut. So he was just like losing his mind that Lance Armstrong's bike is just hanging out at our job. I mean, it was a very big facility, but we traversed the whole place, and he would spend a lot of time with that bike. Yeah,
I have heard that connection. I have a friend that works at Bristol Myers, and every once in a while she'll tell me like, oh, there's some, or years ago, I don't know if there still exists, but that like them sponsoring bike rides, or the Lance and Bristol Myers connection.
I don't
think it's necessarily a connection and a hold. The example I use with Rochester, I think Rochester just happens to have a lot of like pharmaceutical companies that then like need to give back to the community. So the one operation up there that a friend ran, I think was just, their space might have been like kind of donated by one of the companies as more of a like social, like their way of giving back to the community. But then that sometimes fails as far as like existing in free space, because what I've seen before in Newark or other places that you're in this kind of free space, but then the roof caves in and then you have to leave and you have to uproot yourself again. So in a way, like free rent is like appealing, then sometimes it's just maybe not sustainable. Or also like let's say is like a volunteer run operation. It could exist forever, but then sometimes your main person like leaves and then things could fall down.
Oh, that's interesting. So you can't really have a handle on quality control.
Right. So the way we are of having like, and we actually own the building now, which is such like an amazing, accomplishment that Second Life Bikes did. We were renting there and the owner wanted to sell. He really wanted to sell to us. So thanks to my talented board, I wouldn't necessarily have been able to figure out how to buy commercial real estate. But we own it with, other partners too. But having a nonprofit, having a permanent home is like very smart move. So we were able to do it, I think, because, it was Asbury at the time. The owner really liked us. He didn't necessarily have other people wanting to buy that big building, 5 years ago with no parking. So it wasn't like he also like had like double offers. So us having a permanent home is like a nice, it's a strong position to be in as a nonprofit too.
Are the other businesses that are connected to or next to, is that the same building?
The art studio is in the building. They're a tenant of the building. Co-works is upstairs. And then we have a back garage too that might soon be also so there's like Co-works and Second Life Bikes essentially like kind of own the building together, and then we have tenants in that back space.
Got it.
Yeah, so a very like good position for us to be in.
Well, it's a great spot. I know you said there's no parking, and that's true, but it's still a great spot, and it never fails whenever I'm leaving the studio. I mean, if it's during the day and it's not raining, there's always like some bicycle activity coming or going from each direction around the corner, and it's like this little it's this little lively spot, and I think that's really great.
Yeah, I mean the parking, like again, parking is just always an issue and is always going to be an issue. So we don't actually we ride our bikes there, so we don't necessarily mind. It is tough, people are driving from somewhere and they're coming to Asbury Park to donate a bike, and we're have to tell them to park like in the train station or down here. Like people definitely do want to pull up, but we tell them like there's just no street parking there. I mean, we are trying to get. It is such a fast corner now, like fast cars coming down Springwood fast on Main Street, that we would just love that to fix that. People trying to cross over to the train station, but yes, what we do love there, we have a front row seat to like we watch everybody and everyone watches us too. Like we love like watching life go by there, and like you said, there's always different bikes out. There's always different people. So we definitely and like physically like a crossroads of Asbury Park, like on Main Street, people going like through Asbury. I mean, we have people that take the train to us. So in that way, like a great location for everyone, which we try and be too, like accessible. We want everyone to come there.
Were you always into bikes? Like, what's your?
I mean, growing up in Freehold, it was like, just like everyone else, like, learning to ride on like the same neighborhood bike around a dead end. What sparked all of this then was I lived in Germany when I was 22, and I think the first thing I did was like went and bought a used bike at the flea market, and I rode that thing everywhere. I was kind of studying at the university. I had already graduated college, but it was also like teaching English there. So I rode this bike like absolutely everywhere. So that's definitely what developed the like biking as a way to get around obsession. I came back to New Jersey, New York City, essentially. And same thing. I then worked for a German bank downtown, and and this is before like all the bike friendly infrastructure that's in New York City now. I mean, I was literally like kind of biking on the West Side Highway, going downtown. But I was, yes, biking to work, getting involved in like transportation alternatives, which is like the big bike ped advocacy group there. Doing like critical mass rides. I mean, this was when in like the late 90s, early 2000s. So it was in that kind of bike advocacy world. And that's when I also discovered Recycle a Bicycle. So Charis was a big community center on the lower, in East Village. And Karen Overton, who I talked about earlier, had something called Ladies Night. So on Tuesdays, you went into this big old brick building, kind of like Second Life Bikes, and there were just old bikes around and tools, and you kind of like learned from others and tried things. And it was I loved it so much, like dedicated to ladies, and just met like so many good friends there. Like we had a great time.
Ladies' night. It doesn't conjure up images of like ratchet sets and WD-40.
It sounds like cheap cocktails or something like that. Yeah. Like even just thinking about it now, I'm like, oh, it was so much fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So it was it's a practical and pragmatic thing for you. It's in lieu of a car, getting to places, very practical. Is that's the passion, the practicality of it?
I mean, I feel like that was in the beginning. Again, I was just almost just thinking of that. Like, so then I like became interested in how bikes work. And I think once you realize how bikes work, you're like, oh, well, if I can fix my tire, I can ride to Nyack on my bike or wherever, or ride, because in New York City too, there's lots of rides around Central Park. So I feel like, I think I then like bought my first road bike, like a Bianchi, and I was like, oh my God, like, because before that I might have had like a hybrid.
Explain because, in case someone's not in the know, you're talking about handlebar types. So a road bike, can you explain the difference for folks?
Yeah. So, what was my first bike? And I think I've had like a Trek hybrid, like a made in the USA Trek hybrid that I think I bought for the 5-borough bike tour. And a hybrid is like taller wheels, I say. I mean, it's like, so let's start with skinny tired road bike, like from the 80s. That evolved into a hybrid. Everyone didn't want to be like on the curly bars with like the skinny tires. So a hybrid became upright with lots of gears, but then a fatter tire, like 700 by 35, but not a 26-inch tire, which is a little like stubbier, like a beach cruiser.
Right.
So a hybrid's like a very practical bike. Actually, right now it's like, I always say, like there's like 15 hybrids in the shop. They're all going to be gone in a couple weeks, and everyone's going to ask for them. It's a great bike. Say you live in Asbury and you want to go a little further. You want to go up to Sandy Hook. You want to do rail trails or stuff like that. It's like a very versatile bike. Oh, it's not. I realized the past couple weeks I keep saying hybrid, and I think everyone thinks it's like a car, like pedal assist and gas or something.
I didn't.
So
think
I wish
about
it
that.
had a new name, because I said to someone like, oh, a hybrid. She's like, hybrid? That sounds amazing. And then I showed her, and I think she expected
You're like,
to
no,
see something.
there's just a straight bar.
So
That's the only
I'm
difference.
not going to be able to accomplish like changing the name of hybrid, or I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway. I guess it's more like a hybrid between like a mountain bike wheel and like a skinny tired road bike. So I had this hybrid, with bags on the back, so I could like go to the farmer's market or whatever. But then shortly after being involved, like ladies, like I'm like, oh, I need to get like a Bianchi road bike. And I went to Hoboken. I took the path over to Hoboken to get it, and I'm riding, and I think in my head like, oh my God, this is so weird. Like, I'm never riding this thing like in New York City. Like, I'm always going to be taking it like outside. And then I always say to people,
because you feel, I'm going to parse that out, but you feel less safe when you're dropped down, and when the tires are skinnier, turning is exaggerated.
But it's not less safe. I mean, people.
No, it feels that way.
Yeah, exactly.
No, definitely, it's not.
I mean,
less
maybe
safe.
that position, but people think like skinny tires, I'm going to fall over, but it's not the way. You're still like a fatter tire isn't keeping you more upright.
It just takes a minute to adjust to it.
Yeah.
because I've done that, and you're like, oh, it gives you like that. This is a different thing. It's exhilarating.
Yeah. And I bought the Bianchi hybrid from this woman and her husband who were like professors. They had traveled like all around the world or the country with these bikes. And then I kind of laughed that this bike like has been to all these exotic places, maybe around the country, because I think they were professors that moved around. And then like I was like locking this thing up at street poles and like with my huge kryptonite lock and going on critical mass rides with it. Like now this thing was like, oh, I want to travel. But anyway, this Bianchi, actually, who has it now? A friend of mine still has it.
Oh, cool.
A friend of mine. I try and like just pass on my bikes. My hybrid lives in Asbury Park now with a friend. My original truck hybrid, and my Bianchi is in Brooklyn with a friend. So, oh, but going back to like, oh, I don't like this. And then I always say like within 3 weeks, like I was like, oh, I want to be on this position, like in a road bike, and like gave up the hybrid. I feel like there was a start to all that story. Was there a start?
Well, that's all right. When you were talking about distances, you said, people want to go a little further, so they get a hybrid. Like, what distance amount, like in miles, are we talking about?
I mean, if someone comes in and says, well, sometimes they think they want a cruiser, but a cruiser, to me, a cruiser means you live in Asbury or Ocean Grove and you want to just go to the beach. Or maybe you want to go down to Bradley Beach or something like that.
And you have to have a cup holder.
Yeah. Or you just want to go check out the waves, or you just want to go a couple of hours, or you just need to get to your job, like within. So to me, that's what, and people ride them further. I mean, you're allowed to, but that's what it means to me. And same with like an English 3-speed, like an old vintage bikes. It means like you're just kind of going in that distance. Like a mountain bike. And again, I use that. See, I feel like the industry needs to like come up with all different names on it too. Because sometimes I'll say that's a mountain bike, and people are like, "Oh, I'm not going on mountains." But it's like just referred to like the wheel or the knobby tires. Sometimes people like the idea of knobby tires, and you just let them have that too, even though like people aren't like off roading. I mean, you can go to Lair State Park and go, but I think sometimes people think like, "Oh, the roads are rough around here. I need a mountain bike." Which I kind of see the
slows you down though, those knobs. Like you don't want that, folks.
Right.
You don't want that.
But again, if those people are going again in that same distance or maybe a little more, and they have gears and that's how. But then a hybrid, like if you want to go down to Point Pleasant or up to Sandy Hook or take the bike onto like a rail trail or Manasquan Reservoir. I mean, a hybrid to me just makes sense.
So
like
5 to 20 miles.
Yeah.
Much
I mean,
more
also too, like, I mean, again, someone could do 20 miles on their cruiser. So this isn't like this is slightly my opinion too.
Yeah, sure.
But I think it gives people, I was explaining someone the past couple of weeks, it's all about like, educating people again. And I think it kind of makes sense to them. And some people say, no, I'm just trying to like get to the gym, or I'm just trying to like get to, the beach in the next town. So.
And then when folks jump up to like a proper road bike, like you're saying with the drop bars and all that, what distances did you like to go? Like how far were you riding?
Oh, well, in my New York City days, I mean, we would do like crazy stuff, like bike from like 14th Street up to Cold Spring. Like we literally like went down 14th Street and up Broadway and never turned. Like Broadway, I mean, I forget now, it's been a long time, but like Broadway just ends up like never ending. Like you're up in like Westchester or something like that.
So how far is that? I don't have a good sense of that geography.
I mean, one time our friends were taking the train to Cold Spring to hike, and a friend and I, we rode it. So I want to say we left at 6 a.m, but we met them as their train was pulling in.
And then you got to come back.
No, then we put our bikes on the train.
Genevieve, can you Google this? Like, how far is it from 14th Street to
Cold Spring?
Cold
yeah,
Spring.
That is 50 miles.
That's hardcore.
We once did Poughkeepsie, I think, too. But we once biked from New York City to Philly for the races. Down, we didn't race, but we biked. That was crazy. I used to do Jones Beach a lot too. And thinking about it now, like it was kind of hairy.
New York City
Jones
to
Beach
Philadelphia.
Long Beach. Yeah, New York City to Philadelphia.
Oh, I want to get these distances.
I know, but this was all. I mean, I'm not encouraging anyone to do this. Like this is like.
When I grew up in my neighborhood, I grew up in Neptune, and around the corner there was this German family. Like still had the accent and all that. They weren't too many generations in, and they were well, first of all, they were the tallest and fittest people I had ever seen. They
Uh-huh.
would cycle up to like the Poconos
Yeah.
once a year, once every 2 years, and I don't know the distance on that, but I just remember being like, whoa, there's a
Uh-huh.
whole like they felt it felt like they were like superhuman. Like that's another thing. The
Uh-huh.
furthest I've ever gone is probably like 25 miles, maybe close to 30. I haven't pushed it past that, but it's something that it's like it's kind of easy to get addicted to it.
It is. I mean, I feel like I have a 5-year-old now, so life is a little different. I see our eyes through like we do like little rail trails and that kind of stuff. Which is also amazing right now, like how they're around the country turning the rail trails into destinations. I mean, there's so many cool places to go, like super safe, no cars, like destinations, like
When you say a rail trail, is that like a former railroad thing, but there's
yeah.
no more trains that run on it?
Right.
It's
I
just
mean,
kinda,
even the ones here are all former rail trails, like the Edgar Felix, the Bay Shore, from Freehold to Mattawan. Yeah, I mean, I think those were all former rail lines. So using those beds, so to say, or whatever they say, and but there's even like so many cool ones that I read about or have done. Up in Montreal or even like Goshen, like Orange County, like there's an awesome one. Pennsylvania, you can ride from like Pittsburgh, I think, to like you might be able to ride to DC, like pretty much like on a rail trail. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing with Nellie, like someday, these, rail trails and doing like, the Erie Canal.
is that a
like,
multiple day?
Yeah.
So how does that work? Do you like you're not camping or anything? You stop at hotels along the
Well,
way?
I
How
mean,
does
it
that work?
depends. I mean, I think some of them would definitely have to be camping.
So you're carrying your camp gear on the bike?
Oh yeah.
Oh, this is
I
awesome.
mean, that's what I used to do, get back in the day.
Oh
like,
yeah, this is so cool. Tell
but
me.
now I see it more feasible. Like I wouldn't necessarily do that with a 5-year-old's yeah, we're like navigating the Adirondacks and then we're just camping on the side of the road, but something a little bit more. I mean, the Erie Canal is amazing too. And we were up in the Finger Lakes. We didn't do any of it, but just read about it, how you can go from like Albany to Buffalo, and it's kind of and there you're passing through a lot of towns. So meaning like safe and easy-ish, that if you did need to camp, they have camping facilities. They do have towns with hotels. It's not like we're just like, heading out across west where you have to like kind of figure out how much mileage you are doing to get to a town. That I'm not up for right now.
Yeah.
Or like in Europe
sounds like
too.
you might be at some point. So are you on a regular road bike when you have to carry camping gear, or is that a different type of bike?
I mean, you would maybe do it more like on a touring bike that has room for like fenders and racks, and it could accommodate a fatter tire.
Touring bike.
Yeah.
So just in case do you need the fatter tire because of the stuff you're carrying, or because there's a chance you might go on like
I'm just a little bit more
gravel and crap?
comfortable too. I mean, those really thin tires could be a little like jarring because you're carrying weight on your bike too. So, the terrain might be like, not hard packed. You might need something than the super skinny tire.
Do you host rides, or is that
So-
not a thing because too many people would be a drag for a long ride?
So again, like, pre having a daughter, like early Asbury days. Again, I'm gonna have these fond memories of all these like lady friends that we used to hang out together, and don't so much anymore on our bikes. I want to say like 2007 or 8 up until like 2015 or so, I had different versions of ladies' rides and we would incorporate men sometimes too. But again, it just made this nice like camaraderie and so say like 7 years ago or so, a normal thing for us to do would maybe be on like a Tuesday night, like right when the shop closed at like 5:30, head out to the Manasquan Reservoir and back, or Howell High School, or maybe we would do it on a Saturday morning too at like 8 a.m. So that's like a 30-mile ride. And that was like pretty like normal. We didn't necessarily need to have like train for that or be in especially like good shape. That was just like, maybe then in the height of the summer, we would do like out to like, not Cranberry, Clarksville. I think that ends up being like 100 miles back and forth.
What were those two? The first two you said? I want to you said out to
Manasquan Reservoir, Howell High School. We always think of like from Asbury, like a 30-mile ride. And you could do that like an evening. I feel like we would do that on a Tuesday, like summer night. Like, again, like back, leave at 5:30, back in Asbury by 7:30. Pace.
With one break for like 5+ minutes.
Not really many breaks on that kind of ride.
One, at least?
One.
That's cool. Is it mostly flat?
Saturday morning. And we also do, like, again, none of us are really training for anything. So it's not like we needed to, like, keep paces or anything like that. So breaks, like, we did like to break and, like, look at the horses or whatever. We liked it because we like bike riding and we liked each other. Again, we weren't those ones, like, on a Saturday morning that needed to burn a certain amount of calories or do a certain amount of miles to prepare for a race or anything like that.
Is that route, like, mostly flat or is it really hilly?
Oh, that's very flat. Out to the reservoir is very flat.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I jotted that down.
And then we would do, there was like this worldwide event like called the Rafa Women's 100. And although I think it was 100K, like for us to go a further trip would be out to, I think it's Clarksville, like past a Great Adventure out that way. I think if you do that, it's like a century is like a thing, like to do 100 miles. So that might be a century to go 50 miles out, or 50 might be more like, for instance, I'm a little out of my my mileage, but like going up to Sandy Hook also is like, that's like a good ride, like a 30-mile ride or so back and forth. So I feel like I used to do that. That would be like kind of a no-brainer. Like, now, again, with a child or time, or sadly too, just the roads just feel different with like distracted drivers. I try not to think of that, but I do like mountain biking. Like I had gotten into mountain biking. In the city, I was more like, I have a bike and I go places only on my bike. And then, moving down here, eventually then getting a car. And you do realize the car does come in handy for certain things and gets you to, I used to think like mountain biking, like putting your bike on a car and like driving to a car. Like to me, that was like, oh, but now like I have embraced that sport too. So like being able to, that's my partner, Mark, like he was a big mountain biker. We actually met at the Hella Hunterdon, which is a very hard road ride out in Hunterdon County. So actually it's coming up soon. So we met 10 years ago at the Hella Hunterdon, and the pouring rain. Doesn't sound that romantic. On our bikes, like all spandexed up.
Well, it sounds like it's bonding.
Yes, it is bonding.
You said it's hard, so it's like going through like a boot camp. I assume that connects you with people.
Yeah.
Well, you get to see all aspects of a person when they're tested, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to keep your shit together and totally composed when you're heavily pressed.
Yeah.
It's hard.
But yeah, so going to like say I had a free morning and Mark and I wanted to go for a bike ride, like we do this time of year, like to go down to Seagirt and back, which in other days I would have thought like that's not even a bike ride. But I think the other morning we kind of did 17 miles, like up through Long Branch and back. Like once it gets busy, I wouldn't necessarily do that. But being like, we're so lucky to have Alair State Park here, which is such this great place for mountain biking or trail riding, let's call it, because sometimes people are like, there's no mountains there. But you don't need mountains to go mountain bike. You just need like, Alair, you'd think is very flat, but there's lots of, hard punchy climbs there. But it's so great for people that are beginners or you haven't been in a while. It's not like we're up in like Ringwood where it's like, it could be super like hard terrain. So
yeah, one of the engineers here, Nick, he what are we calling it now? Terrain biking?
Well, again, going back to hybrid.
No, I don't want to say it.
Like sometimes I feel like I use the term like I'm not riding mountains, and mountain biking again. I think the industry needs to like totally revamp their jargon, because again, if I was saying I was going mountain biking in Alair, people were like, "There's no mountains there." And again, you're not necessarily mountain biking doesn't mean you're like tearing down a mountain, but great trails out there. And again, if I haven't been mountain biking in a long time, like I still feel totally comfortable like going into Alair and doing whatever,
Yeah, there's a lot. I never realized, and like I mentioned, Nick, the engineer here, he took me on one of the rides. I was not quite qualified, but I hung in And I think he was proud.
Yeah,
of
I mean, there's really fast riders out there. There's people that train out there. I mean, the nice thing, they train for like 100-mile bike races that they're doing in other parts of the country or the world, because Alair does have lots of miles. So opposed to, say, going to like Hartshorn, which could have like steeper climbs or everything, but you can't necessarily get that many miles in. So again, like it's like Alair doesn't make you necessarily a great mountain bike rider, because it doesn't necessarily always test your limits as far as like a place like Ringwood or something would. But again, just so lucky you have it. And you can make it hard. Like I'm sure, Nick, you're saying like I could just go out there for the first time in a long time and have a great time. But then somebody that's training or someone's really could also make it a hard day out there by just, doing a lot of miles or going very fast too.
Yeah, it was intimidating. He was
definitely. You think like I can mountain bike, and then you're with somebody like that, and you're like, oh, this is like.
I didn't have a preconceived notion other than I'm going to do this and stay calm and don't wuss out.
Yeah,
like, stay in there. You got to tamper your fears.
You realize like, yes, you don't need like a rock garden to make it hard, but even like roots. I haven't been as involved. Again, I'll probably be more involved when Nellie is like 12 years old, but there's like a push to get mountain biking as like a middle and high school sport in the whole country. And of course in Northern California and Colorado and Idaho, it's like full blown. I mean, New Jersey's coming along. I mean, the past like, it started about 5 years ago. NICA, it's called, NICA, National Cycling Association.
NICA, very cool.
So the idea is that it becomes a middle and high school sport. Like it's actually something you could join at a school or on like a composite level that you join like your county team. And that's how it exists. Like I actually started the Jersey Shore Tidal Waves. And it's the Monmouth County team, and they practice at Alair, and then you go to races in New Jersey, and it's such an awesome thing. It's it's great for kids that aren't necessarily into team sports. It's maybe a sport that their parents do, so like their parents can be a coach. The kid could ride. You go to practices at Alair. The races are like, again, if you're really good, you can take it really seriously. If you're super slow, it's still this like welcoming environment, and like it's like a big like festival almost out there.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if Nellie will be involved when she's in 6th grade, but if she will, like I will gladly like be a coach again. Mark is a little bit more involved than I am right now, but again, like it's like we kind of started it. And now we've also handed it over to a lot more parents have become involved and become really into it. So it's great that it's something for them, and it's not going away. So if anything, it's just going to keep getting bigger. And I mean, when I go to some of the events now, there's also something called Girls Riding Together, GRIT. I mean, some of these kids, like, they're really good, and they're really into it too. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
oh, gosh, there's a lot. We're going to have to sit down again because clearly we haven't really uncovered the deepest of the cycling experiences and knowledge. How can people support, check out, and get connected with Second Life Bikes?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing is just to come in. I mean, I do get lots of emails and phone calls, and people have like interesting things they may want to partner with. I would love for people just to come in and talk about I mean, it depends what well, first of all, people can donate their old bikes or like, bring them there. That's like an easy thing. If people, or like I said, buying a bike, volunteering. I mean, of course, with COVID, things have been a little off, but again, like coming in and, like just seeing the place, I think also works best. What we have been trying to grow to is like, being involved at more things too. We have such this like beast going on there. I mean, there's just like so much, like what you said when you pass by, like going on at the building. It's hard to sometimes, we try, but there's so many like festivals and events going on in Asbury, whether it's like a community like end of summer event at Springwood or like a music festival, and trying to be present at those things, which is hard. So I've been wanting to like kind of, when I see like Clean Ocean Action or Surf Rider or something, at these events with like volunteers and their literature. So I've been doing this for a long time, but there is ways that, people could help us evolve too.
We've had some of those folks on the show. I'd be happy to connect you with them.
Oh, the surf ride. Yeah, we are.
Well, folks involved with the festivals, not necessarily surf
Oh,
rider.
yeah.
So be happy to connect you. Yeah, so folks, check out Second Life Bikes. What's the address on Main Street?
21 Main Street.
21.
But don't pull up to the front door because there's no parking.
Yeah, don't stop at 21 Main Street. You will get hit by a bus.
Yeah.
Kerri, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was fun. Sometimes I'm like, what are we going to talk about? And then I realized, like, there's so much to talk about, right? Bikes, like, you could talk forever.
Yeah, we're going to have to do this again.
Part 2.
All right. Well, thanks for checking it out, everybody. Have a good day.